So we're mounting a vise today, but it's not going to be in the same location that same location, just not the same style that we had mocked up in the last video. Here's the problem. If we mount the rear vise behind the apron, fully behind the apron, then and use 1.5" chops on both sides, we're essentially taking 9 inches of usable vise capability and we're reducing it to 4.5 inches. For me, that's not good enough. That is not good enough. I need more than 4.5 inches between the jaws of my vise to make it usable for me and what I do. So how do I get that room back? I can make my jaws thinner. I can mount the vise on the front of the apron, like Cody from Wrangler Star does, and Paul, I guess. I mean, most people conventionally mount the vise completely to the front of the bench or the apron. Because that's how it's designed to be mounted. So those are really the only two ways you're going to get that I'm going to get any room back inside the vise. I don't want to compromise the movable chop, so I'm going to leave that at 1.5 inches. But what happens when I move it outside? When I move the jaw outside to the front of the apron, we not only get the 1.5 inches back, the thickness of the apron, but we also get 1/2 inch from the metal portion of the vise, because now I don't have to use 1.5 inches chop up against the apron. I can just use a 1-inch chop to give me that distance away from the apron, and then I can put spacer blocks or inset, really, inset that vise inside the chop, basically carve that metal portion of the vise out of the chop and set it over the top. That way it's still flush across the top and there's no gap in there or anything like that. So right now, this is kind of where I sit. I've kind of mounted it, and that's where we are. I've clamped it to the top. I've transferred the mark over where the bottom of the bench is. Now, one thing that I'm not doing, Cody from Wrangler Star, which is the primary, is like the only video out there that I know of that is that shows installing a vise like this. So that's all I have to go off of. But the way he did it was he ended up putting the top of the rear vise 3/16 underneath the lip, right? Underneath the top of the table. So by doing that, he essentially raises this whole section up almost 2 inches from where I have it, and he ends up having to cut that 2 inches or 2.5 inches or whatever out of the bottom of the bench top to inset the vise in there. What I want to do is I just want to have taller chops. Okay, so what that allows me to do is mount this directly to the bottom of the bench top, and all I have to do is basically draw a line here, drill some holes through the apron, and clean that hole up and put the vise through the hole, clamp it there, drill a few holes for the mountings here, the mounting lag screws that'll go through here, and mount those. Well, after I've mounted, I'll put 2 screws through the front of the vise, and then 2 lag screws up from the bottom through the vise holes here up into the bench. So that's kind of where I sit, and I guess I'll just continue to go. I just kind of stopped right here to start recording, and I'll just start recording. So there's a little gap right here. It's all flush right up in here, but there's a gap in the casting all the way around where the holes are for the guide rods and the lead screw for the vise. So I can't just kind of shove this up in the corner because it'll be too skinny. So I just got to make sure that as I trace it out, that it is kind of leveling the top of the bevel of my pencil along. And it's okay. They actually recommend, both him and Paul Sellers recommend having a little bit of a gap. It doesn't need to be a super tight fit. You're not going to see it a whole lot, but you'd rather have that little bit of room, because if you have to remove the vise for repairs or maintenance or whatever, you want to be able to get at it pretty easy. You don't want to have to mess with trying to bang it or shimmy it out of the hole. It's not going to make any difference where the actual hole is anyway. But so what I did was I transferred where the bottom of the bench top was. Then I also measured to make sure we were the same height on both sides of the vent of the jaw from the top. And then I verified this line by measuring from the bottom of the apron up to the bottom of the bench top on both sides, and I just simply made sure that this plane right here is below that line. So if all the measurements were right, then this plane right here should be lower than this bench top right here. So now that I've marked it all out, it is, oh, and one other thing, I kept it just about a 1/4 inch off of the edge of my vise, or the edge of my leg. So I marked where the leg was, and then I, put it in. It's more like an 1/8 away right now. So I'll either leave it there, or I may end up just bumping it over slightly. But that doesn't really matter. I just wanted it really close to the leg, and obviously I don't want to chop any of the leg out to mount the vise. So just be aware of where you are in relation to the leg. And then take the clamp out. And the good thing about mounting it straight to the bottom of the bench is that I won't have to unbolt the bench top. I just got to drill a bunch of holes through here and chisel it all away. Once that's done, then I can still do everything from all the bench tops on. Will it be easier to do it? Will it be easier to do it with the bench top up? Yeah, but it'll take me 10-15 minutes to unbolt this top and get it, clear it off, unbolt it, take the wedges out, flip it up. It's just, remount everything. It's just, I think it's going to be easier this way, so I'm just going to do it this way. So, Gotta grab, we'll just basically grab the largest drill bit I have, and we'll use the 1 inch out of the Irwin set. I haven't used this brace yet either. It was kind of a freebie from a flea market I was at a couple weekends ago. I caught the very end of a flea market rummage sale type thing and just got a smoking deal. It was basically everything you could fit into a bag was $1. So needless to say, I went around that place, and anything that was worth money got shoved into a bag, and I walked out with hundreds of dollars of tools and other crap for about $4, $3, $4. It was you know, a bunch of old people having a big thing, and whatever I bought and took home, they didn't have to load up into their van. So kind of scored there. But this was one of those things that's I don't even know what it is. I think it's a it's a PEX toe. Looks just like every other brace I've ever used. So I just kind of stay away from the edges. And this has a coarser thread, so it should theoretically go faster. It's almost painful to drill into my apron like this. I had to stare at it for a minute just to make sure that, like, is this what you want to do, dude? So, it feels kind of... You can definitely tell this wood is drying out. And what's great is that it's not really checking or anything on the ends. I don't really have to worry about tear out, but I don't want a bunch of tear out. There it is. So my snail has gone through, so I'm just kind of slowly eating away. So the snail has gone through the other side, and it's no longer biting and drawing the bit in. So it's getting ready to break through. So I'm just kind of using those cutters that are on the edges. These spurs right here, using that to try to cut a clean hole, and then just let the cutting edge do the rest. So I'm just going real slow with it, so there's not a whole lot of tear out in the back. See how this first one goes, and then it's trying to break out. Yeah, that wasn't terrible. Wasn't great, but I guess I could have chosen a more appropriate size. Now I'm going to be, if you've ever dealt with it, you don't want the holes to match up because then the cutter will, I mean you can, but it's just a little more difficult. So, let's get pretty close. Make sure we're outside the edge. I think it's going to get to the point where I don't care if there's breakout in the back. Got pretty close right there. Well, I didn't cross the line. Not like it would matter if I did, but I think I'm going to try my Russell Jennings bits because they have a finer, more like a, they have a fine thread snail, a fine thread snail, and more flutes. I think it might give us a better hole. Well, easier hole anyway. It cuts all my other Russell Jennings. This is a large bit, but there's more resistance on this than there has been on any other hole I've drilled. Again, I'm just kind of getting kind of close to the other hole, and then make sure your edge is kind of close but not overlapping, not coming over your the edge of your line. I don't think I've ever used this Russell Jennings 1-inch. So it's definitely the wood and not the bits. It's a different chip coming off of this Russell Jennings. See what the difference is there. Well, it was right there at the seam too, but the tear out really isn't that bad on any of them. So I'll keep drilling these out, and I guess I'll see you guys soon. Kind of went a different direction than what I originally wanted, and hopefully that, I say hopefully, not hopefully, it'll be just fine if if that thick rear jaw, being so tall becomes a problem. I could just machine an aluminum plate or something to back it up and just make it a 1/2 inch, really. Chop or whatever at that point. I'll find some way to support it, but I think the dowel support with the grain going this way, supporting that horizontal grain, I think that will be the trick. So I'll finish doing this, and then I'll maybe shoot another video later of kind of cleaning and carving this up, and then probably a third one for the actual mount, and maybe a fourth one for the jaws or something. I don't know. So we'll see how it plays out, and until then, friends and family, I love you as always, and everybody else, take it easy. I'll see you on the next video.